On today's podcast, Eric and I talk about my very recent, I'm still jet lagged, trip to Kherson, Ukraine, one of the southern war cities. And we talk about Russian casualties at 1 million. Okay, let's go.
Conflict, politics, military-industrial complex, technology, war. The Flash Traffic Podcast.
Vote for Trump.
Whatevs.
So we're back. We're back after almost 2 weeks. We had that little short podcast right before I left. I just got back yesterday, and I am super jet lagged still. Although I did sleep through the night, which is unusual for me.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Lots of cars, buses, and airplanes. No trains. It didn't fly. The trains did not go through Odessa, where I was trying to go for some reason, or I would have taken a train. I was in Kherson and the Odessa, the southern region.
Yeah, say it normally, bro.
Kherson with a little Kherson. Let me show you on the map. In case you can't see this and you're listening to it just on the audio version of the podcast, the video version is found on Spotify, should be, and also YouTube. So you can find it there. Here is where I was. So you can see.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so I flew to Istanbul. I spent a full day in Istanbul, Turkey, which was amazing because that place is awesome. I'd never been there. That was fun. Then I went to Chisinau, and I spent a day in Chisinau, which is the capital of Moldova. There are approximately 2,000 Russians.
That's it?
In Transnistria.
Soldiers.
Well, just in Transnistria. Yeah, soldiers. There's a lot
Why
of Russians
don't they roll
in
them?
Chisinau.
You could roll 2,000. You could roll them in a 3-day weekend. How come they haven't been rolled yet?
Because Moldova is like a 50-50 proposition right now, pro-Russian, pro-Western. So there's not a lot of political will to do anything against the Russians. But then to get to Odessa Mama, Ukraine, you take a taxi or a bus. I took a taxi. And you can go from Chisinau all the way directly to Odessa.
How long was the taxi ride?
Well, the border stop sucked. The border control point was about an hour and a half, but the taxi ride was 3 hours.
Did they strip search you?
They weren't going to, but I requested it, and I got it done.
Good call.
But 3.5 hours drive to Odessa Mama, and then down here on the Black Sea, and then it was about an hour and a half in the security checkpoint.
What did the border crossing entail at the checkpoint out of Moldova? What did that look like? Did they just look at your passport and say keep it moving?
No, they're pretty thorough. They take your passport, and then they go to the computer, and they do something on the computer and see if you have a record, and then they come back. They look at all your stuff.
They probably scan it, take a copy of it.
Yeah, the usual. They scan your passport, stamp it. Then they look at all your stuff. Sometimes they pull your stuff out. I've had sometimes they pull out my body armor and ask me, what is this? But I never get
And you're like,
detained.
It's a laptop.
I never get detained. I just say, yeah, journalist. And they let me go.
War
blogger. Here's my card. Tell all your friends. Warvector.com. I spent a couple of days, maybe a day and a half on the front side in Odessa, maybe a little less. Then we went to Mykolaiv, which is right outside Kherson. And that is the furthest occupied region. That's as far as the Russians got, was about Mykolaiv, the city, just outside the city. And there are still a lot of landmines and minefields right outside the city. I was out there in the hinterlands with the 38th Marines. There in Ukraine, as I understand it, there's the 35th Marine Brigade, and then it goes all the way up to the 38th, inclusive. So there's four Marine brigades. Now, most of the 38th Brigade when I was there, most of them right now are in the Donbass, actually fighting in the
Right.
Donbass in Pokrovsk.
Right.
There was enough there that they were training other Marines, and they were training the Marines. Let me show you a picture. The Marines that were in Mykolaiv in the field, right next to the minefield, they were training on, amongst other things, how to protect thermally against drones.
Interesting.
Yes. So thermal
Interesting.
cloaks, daytime, nighttime thermal cloaks, and it was about 25 degrees Celsius out there, so like 80 something. It was hot.
You're going to be hot with this gear on.
It was hot, and these guys had full battle rattle on too, so
It's
they
like
had
wearing a mop
Kevlar
suit.
plates.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then add this onto it.
Keeps all your heat in.
Yeah, they said for about 2 hours, and then it just can't contain anymore and just starts seeping out.
Dehydrated. So okay. All right.
Yeah. And then the heat seeps out. Yeah, the heat seeps out, whatever.
Okay.
But they were telling us about all their TTPs on how to hide from thermal drones, which included hiding underneath dead Russian bodies. They didn't expand on that exact technique, but there's other techniques: dig, vegetation, obviously the normal ones. They said there was interesting facets to modern thermal drones, and it's ubiquitous thermal drones, if you will, warfare. The drones can change altitude to better discern thermal signatures, and
Right.
it was interesting. It was an interesting time with the Marines in Mykolaiv. And
So
the Marine that I was with.
There's a lot going on in that space then for drones and thermal generation. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically most of it is trying to survive drone warfare. And they're training it. They're trying to revolutionize counter drone warfare, including shotguns. We talked a little bit about shotguns. We talked a little bit
last
about
line of defense, last 25 yards.
Yeah, they showed me these shotgun rounds. I'll try to describe it. I have a picture of it, but I don't have it ready for the podcast today. But this shotgun round is 12 gauge, and it has these Kevlar filaments that connect little steel BBs, like 6 BBs.
Right.
And so when it comes out, it makes like a little kind of pentagon with these little BBs, and hits the drone's propellers. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Anti-drone shell for a shotgun. Don't know how good it works. They weren't shooting any of them. They didn't show me any demonstrations or anything like that. But the concept was interesting.
You have 3 to 4 seconds remaining in your life to figure out if it works.
Yeah, well, I hope it does work at that point. But maybe you test it. You don't think they test fire it before they get out there? Danger. Anyway,
that's all you got. You're down to nothing. That's what you got. All right, give it a shot.
Yeah.
What else can you do at that point?
Right. Exactly. So then I spent the rest of the trip a little bit more in Odessa, which is an amazing town on the backside. But I spent about a third Odessa, a third Mykolaiv, and then a third in Kherson proper. So going back to the map, just to show you, you can see where Kherson is. It's at the mouth of the Dnipro River on the right bank. Across from on the left bank, across from Kherson, that's where all the Russians are. So,
right.
I'm going to share. Actually, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to share this map. This is a deep state map, and it kind of shows in the city right here where all the Russians are lined up in the Kherson Oblast and the Zaporizhia Oblast. So there are still quite a bit of Russians on the other side of the left bank.
Why is there no movement by them? Is it simply the river? It's too hard to get across? Too defensible?
Yeah, I don't know. When I was, Mykolaiv's on the river too, a different river, but when I was taking the bus across the bridges, I'm like, why couldn't the Russians mount an amphibious assault? And I think the only answer I could come up with is they just don't have the troop transports in the Black Sea to pull that off. They've already lost a few troop transports to unmanned surface vessel drones. The Ukrainians blew them up, but they start trying to truck those things across the Black Sea. They're going to be Neptune missile fodder or drone fodder pretty fast. So that's the only thing that I could come up with why the Russians haven't mounted a full-scale amphibious assault across the river. Also, maybe they saw what happened to the 38th Marines in Kriki last year when the Ukrainians tried to build a beachhead on the other side of the river between the Novokakhovka Dam about here on the map and then the Antonovsky Bridge, which is the other main thoroughfare across the river, which is blown up now. About in the middle of those, the Ukrainians tried to conduct a beachhead in October of 23. And they stayed there about 9 months. And it was amazing how long they could even stay there because they were just getting attacked, bombed by glide bombs, droned out. Support was almost impossible. They told me this whole story about the amphibious assault and trying to hold the beachhead. Very arduous. They ended up supplying them with large drones. Was the only way they could get water, ammunition, food across the river. And casualty evac was almost non-existent.
I was going to say, it sounds like a logistics problem. When you start doing amphibious stuff, it's all about logistics. How do you get all that supply and support to them physically? Makes you think of Stalingrad. The Luftwaffe will just simply fly it in. No, you won't, and you didn't, and it was too hard. If you're down to medium and large drones for supplies, that's probably good for some stuff for a while, but you're not moving in big stuff, heavy stuff.
Yeah, they eventually they couldn't hold it. And then they withdrew to the islands, and then they couldn't hold those either. And then they just fully withdrew. And now most of the Marines are up in Pokrovsk, up in the Donbas, holding the line there.
Has Pokrovsk fallen yet in the last year?
No, they're still holding it.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so the Russian summer offensive is a nothing burger so far?
So far, I talked to the guys in Ukraine. I talked to some of the military guys, the higher ups, and they said that they believe the summer offensive is going to be dispersed throughout the front line. So Sumy, Kharkiv, Donbas, Pokrovsk. And now, as you're probably aware of, the Russians are starting to get a small foothold into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast.
Isn't that recipe for failure? Where you so disperse your troops, there is no mass, there is no concentration, so therefore your enemy can respond and then defeat you in detail? Yeah, I'm just going out on a limb on this one.
That's one of the principles of war, but I thought about this the last couple of weeks. You kind of have to give the Russians, the Kremlin, credit, some credit. They're not completely oblivious to the principles of war. So if they're not massing, it may be because this is their plan. We have to assume, I think we can safely assume that the Kremlin knows more about what's going on in Russia. Maybe not Putin, but some of the generals and the colonels know what's going on in Ukraine. And so if they are doing these motorcycle assaults, if they're dispersing across the front lines, they know something that the Washington Post or war bloggers or journalists.
What do they know?
They must know something. I'm going to give them credit.
What do they know?
Give them some credit.
So tell me what they know. You don't know what they know.
I wish I knew what they knew.
You're just saying they know something.
I'm assuming that they know something more than the average war blogger or journalist.
And that is?
I don't know. How would I know? You keep asking me.
So there's no sense to it. So you're just saying there must be some underlying logic. You can't detect it. You can't discern it. You have no idea what it is. But you're just going to say that there's something out there.
I'm saying don't underestimate your enemy.
Oh, I'm with you. That's why you got to keep them on the death conveyor. Keep them on the death conveyor.
Sure. I guess, and we can talk about the dead Russian fallacy at 1 million casualties as of this last week.
Right.
But let's do that after Kherson. So, Kherson, down here at the mouth, the southern mouth of the Dnieper River, in the initial full-scale invasion, it took the Russians about 3 days to cross the river from Crimea and surround the entire city. It was really quick. And some people speculate that a lot of that was due to collaborators, a lot of Russian collaborators in the local government, in the military.
Sure.
And we may never know, or we won't find out for 10 or 20 years until other things are revealed. But it was quick. And then there was a resistance. And then in 11 November of 2022, the Ukrainians liberated the city. So it was everybody remembers it. It was a big deal. Zelensky flew out, or he didn't fly out there. He came to the city about 3 days after the Liberation Day, gave a big speech. Everybody had Ukrainian flags. And then it slowly turned into this remote control siege of the city. And it's been like that ever since. It was artillery, now it's drones. But they call it the human safari because the Russians sitting from across the river are flying FPV and Mavic drones and targeting civilians. And some people think, and apparently there are SIGINT intercepts from the Russians that show that they're using Kherson as a drone training ground.
Sure. That's not new. If you looked at Sarajevo and the fighting there in the 90s, the Serbs used the civilians and citizens for target practice. Sniping. They'd bring people in and pay to take a shot and kill a Christian or Muslim person or woman. And yeah, sadly, that's not new. But what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
Russians don't care.
Yeah, the Russians don't care. And as of last month, they think that 150 civilians have been killed, and who knows how many have been injured. Thousands have been injured by this human safari. And Kherson, this situation in Kherson, it's interesting because every war city that I go to, and every time I go back to Ukraine, the war has changed. It's completely unique, and Kherson's no different. The fact that the Russians can pretty much just sit across the river and target practice civilians in the city makes it a pretty unique situation. But when we got into the city, I met a friend of a friend, because that's how everything works. My contact was a friend of a friend who I'd never met. And we proceeded to drive very quickly through the city because obviously you don't want to drive slow because the Russians will attack your car. You don't want to stop. If you get out of your car, you want to go directly into a building. You can't wear a seatbelt because if you get hit by a drone, you got to get out and run away. And everybody is driving like that. So let me get off the map and let me show. This is a video of us driving around the city.
Sounds like driving around Detroit.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty much like that. So we get it.
Oh, so it's nicer than Detroit.
Можешь кружок сделать, если там
Slightly. Oh, I stopped it.
есть. Ну, якщо нема, то нема.
So the amazing thing about this is almost every building has shrapnel. It's not completely destroyed. It has boarded up windows or it has shrapnel marks. And the city is basically a ghost town. The original population of the city before the full-scale invasion was roughly 250,000 people. Now they think there's about 50,000.
Makes sense when you could get killed in a drone strike any day.
Yeah, the sad thing is, I did see some younger people there, and there's actually some recruiting posters for the Army. And this is a video. This is the administrative building, the White House. A couple of days before I got there, it was blown up by two glide bombs, Russian glide bombs. Here's another shot of it.
So the Russians just kind of picking at it, pecking away at it.
At the city?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just slowly
doing what they
destroying the city.
can whenever they got the extra munitions. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, the sad thing is the only people left in the city are the old, infirm, people that are don't have the resources or the family to get them out of the city. That's the majority of the city. Everybody's driving fast because they don't want to get hit by the drones. We almost got in an accident one time. We almost got T-boned from my side of the car. The guy didn't see this other car coming from our blind spot that was also going about 60 miles an hour. Luckily, the Ukrainian word for stop is also stop. So,
thank goodness.
Yeah. Disaster averted. And interesting little side story. We're driving around taking videos of the city and we get stopped. No shit. We get pulled over by the police.
Good.
We get pulled over by the police and they're like, what are you guys doing driving around Kherson taking video? You must be Russian collaborators.
Oh, good for them.
We had to explain that we're journalists. I'm a journalist. And I had to show them my thing and I had to delete some of the videos. So I didn't. A lot of my videos were deleted. That sucks.
So that's law enforcement working.
They're doing their job. I have to give credit to the.
That's a good experience.
Kherson police force. They're on it. They're really on it. I wasn't too enamored by being stopped on the side of the road. It was for about 5 minutes, and I was pretty nervous about that.
Eating a drone,
yeah, or a grenade from a drone, more likely.
That'd be ironic. Well, you'd probably survive that.
Yeah. You can't wear your body armor or your Kevlar because you stick out like a sore thumb. And the Russians can see everything because they're flying ISR birds as well over the city. And I went out with the National Guard guys while I was in Kherson. The guys that actually hunt these ISR birds with FPV drones. And I could talk about that later. But yeah, so you can't wear body armor. You get out of the car, you go right into the building. And can't wear a seatbelt. So really one of the most dangerous things in Ukraine, if you're a journalist, is just driving around because they drive too fast. You get an auto accident. You don't want to be in a Ukrainian hospital for a month. Hopefully you're unconscious.
Yeah, right.
But this city is a ghost town. And I've been to, I would say, most of the war cities. Minus the ones that are completely destroyed, like Bakhmut, Pokrovsk, Avdiivka. But Kyiv, obviously, Kharkiv, Sumy twice, Kharkiv a couple of times, Kramatorsk, Zaporizhia city. None of them are as destroyed as this city. You can drive around those cities. You can even drive around Kyiv and you'd be like, oh, look at that. That one was hit. That city got that building got messed up. But sustained destruction, there was nothing like it, like Kherson. It's the human safari. It's terrible.
That'll be a good chapter in your book.
Yeah, it will be a chapter in the book. I think I'm going to put out starting in July is the 1 year anniversary of the human safari. So I think I'm going to try to get an article published about that. And then there will be a chapter in the book about Kherson. But basically, it's ghost town. 50,000 people left. Most of those are the old and the infirm out of 250,000. And we, we visited a guy that was part of the resistance while Kherson was occupied. And he's got some amazing stories about blowing up, calling in airstrikes on Russian artillery strikes, I guess, MLRS, actually on Russian aviation assets. And I won't reveal too much of that. But I will say that he spent 3 months in a cellar. Let me see if I don't know if I have the video.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I don't have the video of the cellar, but I took a video of his cellar, and it was pretty austere, to say the least. 3 months in the cellar with his wife and child, and then they had to sneak across. They had to sneak out of the occupied zone with another family, basically a bunch of children. So he was saying that he had not seen a Russian drone about one a month, and now he's seeing them every day. So the Russian drones are getting either more legs on them, or they're getting better at drone warfare or something. They have not seen a lot of fiber optic drones in Kherson, according to the people I talked with. I thought that was interesting. Apparently, they don't need them.
Well, I would also probably hazard to guess, if you've got a fiber optic drone, you have a target that you're going for. You're not just cruising. I think without a fiber optic, you can cruise, go out for 20 minutes, don't see anything, come back. I don't know. Can you do that a fiber optic drone? Aren't you one and done with a fiber optic drone?
I mean, it's a mathematical equation of how much fiber optic line you have left. And maybe the river also has something to do with it. They don't like to drape that fiber optic across the water.
In the water.
That might have something to do with it. But if you've got 20 kilometers of fiber, clearly you can go 10 kilometers out and then 10 kilometers back. But for whatever reason. And it might be also because the city doesn't have enough, as it was told to me, they do not have enough REBs, electronic warfare, radio electrona berotba. So their version of electronic warfare. That's another thing that they said they need. And pickup trucks, because these guys that drove me around are the same guys that if somebody gets hurt in a part of the city because of drones, they go out there and they pick them up. And they said that they told me they needed armored vehicles. And I said, like a 113. And I said, isn't that going to attract some Russian attention if you're driving around the city in an armored vehicle? He said, yeah, you're probably right. I forgot to mention, none of these guys spoke English in Kherson. I was basically on my own with just my Ukrainian. And if something really needed to be clear, I used Google Translate. Yeah. But for the most part, it was very inconvenient to use Google Translate. So I was able to survive, I guess, on my limited Ukrainian. So shout out to my Ukrainian tutor, Ira. Thanks for everything. So I think the bottom line on Kherson, and I'm still digesting the trip, so I'm still making conclusions. But I'm worried that this city might be a microcosm of Ukraine in general. So it's the city that the war forgot. So in November of 2022, it was a big fanfare. It was a big show of victory, and now it seems like a show of defeat. And it also might speak to Ukrainian resources. So if they don't have enough resources to protect Kherson, REBs, all the food and water seem to be trucked in or brought in by volunteers. It's a pretty sad situation. So I think it's indicative of the Ukrainian state in general. So
It's a war zone.
It's a war zone, specifically a war zone. There's other parts of Ukraine that are not that war-y.
Right.
Odessa, when I was in Odessa, it wasn't that we didn't have that many airstrikes. Everybody was expecting retaliation from Operation Spiderweb. That really didn't.
Where was it?
Didn't manifest itself. It didn't show up.
So it was bullshit. So it was complete bullshit. Complete
Russians can't do it.
Russian propaganda bullshit
Yeah.
that some people in the West and the U.S. particularly, and the U.S. government took on as, now you're really going to get it. What
Mhm.
a detached, fantastical, bullshit groupthink mindset. Russia has done everything they already can years ago. They have nothing else to do. The idea that, you crossed another red line is debunked bullshit. And you would have to be living in a fantasy world or be a Kremlin nut hugger to think Russia has any other cards to play. They have none. All the cards have been
Yeah.
burned, thrown on the ground, trampled. Propaganda Kremlin bullshit. Have a nice day.
It does seem to be indicative of that. The only thing that I
Oh,
saw in
really?
Odessa, the only thing I saw in Odessa, other than the water being completely out in my hotel the last night, that sucked.
You okay?
Oh, it's wartime.
Oh, little boy,
war's
you
tough.
okay? Okay.
Yeah. Other than that, I was eating dinner on the beach overlooking the Black Sea at about 9:45 at night, and the artillery, air defense artillery, opened up on something. They think it was Russian ISR. You could see it over the horizon. It was pretty cool. Little fireworks show. Nothing like Tel Aviv, or Tehran, but it was pretty cool. Pretty awesome that it wasn't, coming in at us, I guess. A little bit about the ISR hunters. So these are National Guard guys that you see the videos of the FPV drone hitting the Orlan or the Russian ISR bird, the fixed wing bird. And we had hypothesized that maybe they take FPV drones up on fixed wing drones and get them really high and then drop them off. These guys are not doing that. They said that most of the ISR, the Russian ISR birds, are flying around the city at about 1,500 meters.
It's about a mile.
Yeah. So here's a screenshot of here's a screenshot of the FPV drone that they use. They said this drone can go up to 4 kilometers straight up.
Wow.
And they don't have it doesn't have a long range. So they drive around and try to get under the Russian drones. And they can see they have a radar picture of all the Russian drones that are flying at the time around the city. So they try to get close. Then they launch this thing off of that cardboard box that you're looking at. That's their launch pad. If you see right here, if you can see my cursor right under the battery of the drone, there's a small tube. It's about 3 inches wide and an inch diameter. And that is basically a tube of Simtex. So that's C4. That's the munition. That's all it is. There's no shrapnel. It is just pure Simtex.
For anti-drone.
Yep. And then there's, of course, a blasting cap that they insert. And then there's a safety mechanism that is released when the drone takes off. And that's it. That's all you need to take out Russian ISR birds. And they said they're pretty, if you can find them. Yeah. And they're pretty successful at it, I guess. They would not let me take any pictures other than this close-up of the drone. They wouldn't let me take any other picture for operational security, of the guys or the vehicle that they were driving for obvious reasons.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. But I thought that was interesting, just to get that gauge on how they were, how they've been conducting anti-fixed wing drone operations in the city of Kherson. And that was it. I mean, I saw a lot. It was kind of a whirlwind tour. Made a bunch of new contacts because, hey, that's the coin of the realm in Ukraine.
Right.
Is contacts. It's all about contacts. Can't go anywhere without contacts. And every contact, you want to kind of snowball that into more contacts. And that's your value, really. Value proposition. But that was some of my trip to Kherson this time in Odessa, Mama. Um, still don't have a warm and fuzzy. Every time I go to Ukraine, I never get a warm and fuzzy that can they beat the Russians? Yes. Are they beating the Russians? Doesn't seem like it. No, they are not beating the Russians. Could they? I think, yeah. I think they have the aptitude.
Then why aren't the Russians moving forward then?
Let's see. We can talk about the dead Russian fallacy.
How come Russia's only taken 1% of Russian territory or Ukrainian territory in the last 6 months? Well, I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, they're taking their time. I don't know. I can't speak to the Russian strategy.
Well, you can. They're incompetent.
Sure.
When Prigozhin got whacked, they whacked the only competent military leader they had. And Putin sided with Shoigu and Gerasimov, which are two antiquated, backwards, hillbilly dumb fucks who are right up there in the corruption level with Putin. The corruption and incompetence starts with Putin. It trickles down to his two commanding generals. And then it just enervates the entire Russian military. The Russian military is built on corruption. You don't go in the military to serve your country. You go in there as an officer to fleece the system and make yourself money. That's why Ukraine's been hanging on, because the Russian entire political and military establishment is corrupt to the core, and it starts with their senior leadership. They are inept, backwards, dumb fuck hillbillies, and that's how Ukraine holds on, because they're less fucked up than the Russians are. When Russia takes over 1% of your territory in 6 months, bro, you ain't winning. That isn't winning. When the U.S. invades Quebec and takes 1% of Quebec territory in 6 months, U.S., you're not winning. It shows you can't win.
Yeah,
that's the reality.
I look. As far as the dead Russian fallacy at 1 million casualties, it's still, I think the dead Russian fallacy still holds.
Until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't, right. But, let's talk about it again at 2 million casualties.
Agreed.
Because the Russians are recruiting plenty now.
Right.
Their numbers are fine as far as recruitment. And a lot of those casualties that they're losing 35,000 a month, and they're recruiting 35,000 a month, a lot of those casualties are return to duty. So the Russians, if you look at it like that, the Russians are actually net positive as far as increasing soldiers.
And that's good
month.
In the long run from the cold calculus of defeating Russia. You want Russia to willingly set up the death conveyor. You want them to get enough people to keep feeding them into the slaughterhouse just to keep this party going. It'd be a problem if they couldn't get people and you couldn't get them willingly to walk off the cliff. You were getting them and their entire military to walk off the cliff. They've already walked their entire mechanized force off a cliff, all of it. The numbers, you don't even talk about Russian armored vehicle numbers getting blown up anymore because they're irrelevant. Tanks and infantry fighting vehicles and armored fighting vehicles are irrelevant in this war. Doesn't matter anymore. However this war turns out will have nothing to do with mechanized forces. They've all been walked off a cliff. They don't have anymore. And wherever they produce in onesies and twosies, get smoked. I saw a video of a 4 Russian vehicle at a dirt road in an open field at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You know the story. Dog meat, drone bait, you no talent ass clowns keep running up the middle. But there's a secret plan that the Russian generals know about. No, there isn't. This is walking off the cliff, and the Russians hope that eventually the abyss gets filled up and they can actually make it over the cliff and just keep walking on their own bodies. From a long-term perspective, this is perfect that they are willingly running their society into the ground.
They are
with no opposition to it.
They're destroying Russia slowly but surely. And hey, I'm okay with that. Let's destroy Russia completely. That would be nice. On my plane, I rewatched Gladiator, the original one.
What?
I rewatched the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe, and it was awesome. Again,
a very good movie.
But in the very beginning, when they're fighting the Germans, the Gauls or whoever it is, he goes, people should know when they're defeated or when they're conquered. And he goes, well, would you? Would I? Would they give up? And I think it applies to Russia as much as it does Ukraine at this point. I think Russia's going to continue to walk off that cliff forever.
Good.
Bad news for Ukraine, though.
No,
It's not going to help Ukraine any.
It's actually good news for them in the long term. Your long-term
I
security
don't know about that.
is destroying the Russian army. There is no other solution to this. You think you were stopping the Third Reich in World War II with anything other than destroying their military? What are you, smoking crack? Do you think you were stopping Imperial Japan through any other means than destroying their means for waging war? And until they have an absolute defeat and they admit and recognize them defeated, they're not stopping. So your only answer is defeating them militarily, or this is going to fester forever. Did the Napoleonic Wars end through diplomacy? You defeated Napoleon.
I agree with you.
And that's how it started. If you don't do that with Russia, it's not going to stop. That's the cold facts.
I agree with you for the most part. But also, if you figure 2-to-1 casualty ratio, how many Russians are you going to kill before all the dead Ukrainians add up that are until it's untenable for Ukraine? I mean, the clock's ticking for Ukraine too. The clock is ticking.
In all-out war, it is estimated that you can lose 10% of your population. Depends on a whole bunch of stuff. You can mobilize 10% of your population. So let's say for Ukraine, that's 4 million or 3 million. Do they have 3 million casualties of soldiers or 3 million? No, they're not. They're not even close to running out. They're not there yet. People forget that. Same with like the U.S. and after 9/11. We never sustained enough casualties to where we physically couldn't do this anymore. That was never going to be how we lost in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever you want to call it. Same with this. Until you've killed the 10% of their population that they can put in uniform, they're not done yet. Now it's a battle of will and a battle of support.
Yeah,
like it always has been.
Like it always has been. All right.
Who wants it more?
Yep. Who wants it? It's battle of wills. All right. Hey, good chat. Hey, as always, if you like the Flash Traffic podcast, leave us a review, leave us a comment, forward the link to somebody that listens to podcasts. We would appreciate it. Okay, good chat. I will talk to you later.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Flash Traffic Podcast.